Welcome to Conservation 101. Today's symposium is inspired by the current conservation project here at the Parthenon. We have this incredible collection of casts of sculptures from the Parthenon. And right now, visitors have the rare chance to see their care and conservation happening on site in the treasury on level 2, thanks to the generous support of the Hayes Foundation. So thanks to the Hayes Foundation, we are able to preserve our cast collection and have it remain an educational and artistic resource for generations to come. I'd also like to thank Centennial Park Conservancy for their support of our entire Symposia series for years now. But each month this year, we are hosting free virtual and in-person talks with experts across archaeology, history, and art. So I'm going to drop a quick line in the chat with information about our 2 upcoming symposia in March and April. So without further ado, allow me to introduce our speaker for today, someone I know you will love as much as I do. Nicol Anastassatou is the head conservator at Corinth Excavations for the American School of Classical Studies at Athens. And believe it or not, she celebrates her 20th anniversary at Corinth next week. So this is a great celebration. She holds an official license as conservator for the conservation of antiquities issued by the Greek Ministry of Culture. She's been an instructor of conservation technicians and site and museum guards for the Greek Ministry of Education. More than that, she has also worked as a conservator for the Greek Ministry of Culture and several museums and sites on the islands of Delos, Santorini, Samos, Kythnos, Paros, Naxos, Mykonos. How amazing is that? And was the head of the Conservation Laboratory and head conservator for the Tholos Stadium and Greek Baths at the site of Epidaurus, an archaeological site not too far from Corinth, where Nicol is joining us today. Welcome, Nicol.
Hello, Katie. Happy to see you, and we're welcoming you at Corinth. I wish we could be doing this from the museum, but here is afternoon and the museum is closed now. So maybe some other time, different time zone. So I would like, before we start, I would like to send our thoughts and prayers to Turkey because they have a major problem with the earthquake lately. And these people there are struggling really hard. And we prepared for you a small, short video to introduce you to our work here in Corinth, American School, what we do, and Corinth Excavations. So thank you so much, and we'll get back to you after the video. So any questions, please note them. The presentation that will follow is an overview of the work of the American School of Classical Studies and especially the curation of the finds here in Corinth Excavation. We will talk about the history of the school and the American presence in ancient Corinth, the conservation of artifacts from the field to the museum, and about the management of the vast collection. The American School of Classical Studies at Athens is one of the oldest and largest overseas research centers in Greece, where it has been protecting, preserving, and promoting Greece's historic past for over 140 years. Starting in ancient Corinth in 1896 and at the Athenian Agora in 1931, both excavations run to the present day.
The school is a non-profit institution and in order to support its programs relies on private funding. The American School operates under the auspices and generosity of the Greek Ministry of Culture and its local representative, the F48 of Antiquities of the Corinthia. We are grateful to the director of the F48, Panayota Kassimi, for our excellent collaboration all these years. Corinth Excavations are running a training excavation school for graduate students of American institutions who come to Greece for a year as regular members. They learn how to excavate, the methodology, the recording, and also post-excavation processes. We also have conservation interns that learn to treat freshly excavated material. The school has a long history in excavating here in Corinth and from the early years has employed conservation technicians. The first professional conservator was employed by Emeritus Director Charles Williams and worked in Corinth from 1967 to 2003. There is a big diversity and quantity of the types of materials we excavate every year. For example, every year, approximately half a ton of pottery in sherds is excavated, apart from the coins and small objects. Conservation is the process of stabilizing an object in its current condition without interrupting the integrity of its history through specialized cleaning and analyzing technique. Documentation is a basic principle for conservation. One of the first things a conservator will do is to create a conservation record. In this record are documented all the procedures, materials used on the object, and photographs before and after the treatment. Up until 2017, the excavation and conservation process was documented through the use of notebooks and printed conservation records. Since 2018, Corinth Excavations embraced the use of digital technology by implementing iDig, an application developed at the American School by Bruce Hartzler. This application allows researchers to document and compare the finds of each excavated area and instantly retrieve archival records. Among other revolutionary methods adopted by Corinth Excavations, we are now using laser scanning for digitizing our finds and advanced photogrammetric techniques that allows us to virtually reproduce large areas. Researchers from around the world can access this information online for free. Here I would like to thank my colleague James Herbs for his immense help in implementing these technologies. Archaeological conservation is a profession devoted to the preservation of the archaeological record, including large-scale features such as sites, structures, and landscapes, as well as artifacts. Archaeological conservation is guided by ethical principles that derive from the understanding that these materials are primarily resources for understanding and interpreting the past. Our work is conducted in the field as well as in the museum and collections. While excavation allows us to learn a great deal about the past through studying archaeological remains and their context, exposing artifacts that have been buried can cause rapid and irreversible deterioration. We work to stabilize and preserve the material remains of the past, as well as to investigate how things were made, used, and disposed of. Working with other archaeological professions, bioarchaeologists, paleobotanists, architects, archaeochemists, art historians, conservators contribute to a better understanding of the past. Underground conditions affect the deterioration and preservation of archaeological remains. Exposure to moisture, oxygen, heat, and agents of deterioration speed up decomposition in burial. For terrestrial environments, soil conditions, moisture, pH, salinity, and groundwater penetration have a large effect on the types of materials which we preserve. Inorganic materials tend to remain better preserved in a wider variety of conditions compared to organic materials. Of course, inorganic materials also change through burial. Metals corrode and weaken, and porous materials like stone and ceramic can be broken or absorb harmful salts. For the most part, organic materials do not survive well in burial conditions that subject them to periodic moisture, allowing organic decomposition and biological attack. Organic materials are usually best preserved in hot, dry environments, like in Egypt, or in a wetter, colder environments where they remain in relatively constant temperatures with low oxygen exposure. Surprisingly, sometimes organic materials do survive in marine environments, like in wooden shipwrecks. During our excavation season, we conserve all the types of materials found, like stone, metals, ceramics, glass, bones, mosaics, and in situ structures. There are many ways to investigate the materials and the structure of the artifacts with the use of science. Among others, we use FTIR, which is the most common form of infrared spectroscopy and is used to identify organic and inorganic pigments. SEM, scanning electron microscope, is an instrument that we can produce a largely magnified, high-resolution image by using electrons. XRD, X-ray diffraction, is an important method to characterize the structure of crystalline material. XRF, X-ray fluorescence, is a non-destructive analytical technique used to determine the elemental composition of materials. Petrographic thin section is a thin slice of rock or mineral sample that can be analyzed using a polarized petrographic microscope. All these CSI-like techniques are conducted in collaboration with the school's Malcolm H. Winner Laboratory for Archaeological Science. Last but not least, all objects are stored and protected in climate-controlled environment in special areas of the museum. Our concern is to preserve as much information as possible in order to put the pieces of the puzzle together. We are in close collaboration with researchers, and we provide them with answers about materials and its use. The final and most important step of the entire process is to publish all this information for future generations. A conservator's job is so intense, demanding, and exciting because each object poses a new challenge that causes you to think out of the box, and having to collaborate with researchers from all over the world is what makes our work fascinating.
So, as you can see, that was a short introduction prepared by Nicol so that we could get back into the museum despite it being evening and closed. And Nicol, I know you also have some images to show us before and after as well. So thank you for sharing that video, Nicol. That was so much fun to watch and see your work in progress. You know, I love that time lapse too.
Okay, let's share my screen. What we were saying is here in Corinth, we are a really small lab, mostly working for the field excavation. So I got some pictures to show you what is our job and what we do. And we work in the field. As you see me here, I'm consolidating some skeletons to be lifted. And here I'm doing a squeeze of an archaeologist asked, or moving statues in the courtyard, or preparing something for a metal, and removing a metal to place a marble capital. Here we are conserving marbles or moving. This is, and here are in the lab. What we do is we are conserving all types of materials, whatever can be found in an excavation. So we're not a lab that specializes in only one material. Whatever can be found in the excavation, we are treating. I wanted to say, for those of you that don't know, that the objects are found in, especially the ceramics, are found in the excavation most of the time broken. And here is my colleague Takis Notis, who retired the last couple, he's retired 2 years ago, but he did an amazing job. And I'm showing you a pot, like a puzzle. What we do at first, we have to find all the pieces and spread them, and this is how we are placing them. And I'll show you how this became after it was conserved. So what I'm going to show you is objects, how we find them in, sometimes we find them in the excavation, and the way we find them, and then how they are after they are conserved. And then make notes to ask me questions if you like. So the object that you saw is an amphora or an inokoi, just a second, an amphora. And this is how we find them, and we bring them in the lab. And here it is conserved, and also the drawing for the publication by Christina Kolb, our designer. And this is the amphora. And that's another object, how we find, sometimes we find them like this. And these were complete. So we will talk about this object, how it is before conservation, and always documentation, as we were saying at the video, documentation makes a very, very big difference in conservation. We are documenting everything. And this is how it is conserved and ready to be in the museum or in the storeroom. Okay, so I know a lot of you are going to ask me what this is, why this white stuff here is. So this is when we found the crater, there were, as you see here, objects inside. And because we know of the shape of the crater, we know that there is also a base. And we did wanted to take the crater complete to the museum because we were seeing some cracks. So we used that cling film, which holds the object together, and we lifted it to take it to the museum to be conserved. That's the easiest way to keep all the pieces together. So here are the pieces, and also this is the base. And this certain crater had also problems on the surface. And this is how it is when it's conserved and treated. And all the colors were kept as much as we could. That's another object, one in Ohoet. These objects were close, one close to the other. So that's why you see, this is the crater I showed you before. And this is the documentation. Always take pictures and then take pictures after the object is conserved. This is a sickle that was found in an excavation, and because the material was really fragile, the iron, we had to lift it by using a gauze and with an acrylic glue to bring it to the museum and make it easy to work, so we won't bring it in pieces. And this is how he ended up. And I'll show you some more. So the other things that they were together were here, had also a knife and a small pot. And then you can see here how many things we found after removing the soil. These are nails and clock and some key holders. And all these are conserved. Other things that we find in the excavation are lead seals, small objects. So this is a lead seal, and this is the pictures are before conservation and after the conservation as you see them. Bronze materials, this is a bronze spoon and bones. These are all conserved by hand. We use most of the time we use the microscope so we can see better, and basically we're cleaning them by using mechanical tools, and we're trying to avoid as much as chemicals as we can. I'm showing you some small, nice terracotta figurines, faces that we want to preserve the colors that they have been found. And this is before and after, and more terracotta. And then as you can see, some of them, they've got, this has one broken nose, but there is color on the break. So we assume that this was made in the ancient times. It's kind of somehow conservation in the ancient times. And also we've got knives and handles. And you see pictures before and after. And this is a nice dove. Really small ones. You can see the scale underneath. These are pictures before and after. You see the preserved color on the sides. We don't have the head. It would be nice if we would have the head. So more small objects. This is a marble lid. You can see here that we got some preservation of color, and this is when it's clean and conserved and mended. One of the things we do here is we try to consolidate, do some work in situ. So we did. There is a complex of Frankish complex here in Corinth, and we were working like 3 years ago, and we were consolidating walls, and the complex is huge, and I'll show you how it was when we started and doing works outside. And this is a work in progress, and then the same space when we finished it. The same here. We were consolidating walls, and trying to make it trying to open to the public. So this year, we're happy to announce that eventually we will open it to the public, and it's going to be a really nice addition to the rest of the site. So what you see here is the complex from above and how it was when we started. One other big project that we have here in Corinth is the conservation of this mosaic. It's in the South Stoa, which is 160 meters long building. You can see it here. And the mosaic was underneath that shed. We decided that it had a lot of problems of preservation, so we decided to lift it in pieces. You can see a picture here with all the pieces. And now we're in the process of conserving the pieces, and we want to put it back in the building. There is a big conservation project about this. So I left for last some gold. Gold doesn't need a lot of conservation, but sometimes the gold is really interesting, especially if there is a ring, and everybody likes rings. And this is a ring that had a crab on top of the stone, and some letters. And I hope you like it. All these objects, we have this archive, digital archive, that you can enter and try to find them by using the inventory number. It's asksa.net, and I'm just showing you a picture here with all the objects. You can go and just type a year, and you will see all our conserved objects. So what I would like to say is archaeology and conservation is a teamwork. So I would like to thank each and everyone that I work 20 years now, next week. And especially I would like to thank my director, Chris Pfaff, and the associate director, Julia Jonu, for collaborating all these years nicely. And I hope for some more years before we retire. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm here to answer any questions if you like.
Thank you so much, Nicol. I loved being able to see the video inside the museum with, working on some of the artifacts and the museum spaces, and also talking about the excavation, because that's a huge part of your work. But, those before and after pictures really pack an enormous punch when you can see how much detail you are able to communicate after conservation. So what we will do now is open it up for questions. If there is something you are wondering, please feel free to type it in the chat function or the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we will be able to answer any questions. I'll do a quick search to see if I find any for now. I'm not sure I see any yet. So Nicol, I will start with a question, since I know a little detail that the excavation is about 3 months every year in April, May, and June. So can you talk about how you manage finding and conserving new artifacts every year when you also have the big mosaic projects and the Frankish area projects? How do you stay up on conserving everything new, but also conserving the things that have been part of the excavation for 100 some years?
Well, Katie, you know, time schedule. It's all about time and how you divide your time in a day. Like now we're almost finished with the Frankish area, but and the mosaic has to wait. And while the excavation season is on, because we've got students, we need to focus on the objects that are we find every year. And so we kind of leave something, start something else, and then we get back to this is how it's done. And the excavation, the way we do it here, we have to conserve the objects when they are found. So we have to work a little bit fast. So the students would have to study them and you know, write their report. So one depends on the other.
We have a question here. What was your most challenging project and why?
This is difficult. This is difficult to answer because each one of the objects is challenging. Every time you have to, you know, solve problems or answer questions about the object, and then the archaeologists that are working with them, they've got answers while they're studying. So you are conserving something, and then they might get back to you what you see or what you saw and explain to them and be more helpful. So each time you have to study the object you're working on before you start acting, treating. So it's challenging every time. Apart from, okay, it's a little bit different when you have big projects like the Frankish area or the mosaic. These you need to study more and it takes a while, but it's something that you don't, you know, you don't conserve in a day or two. It takes years to be conserved. Like we were working for the Frankish area 5 years, 10 maybe, because we were doing that. We were doing it while we excavated. So
Yeah,
and
and you also showed some tiny artifacts like the gem of the gold ring, which I'm sure is also a whole other set of challenges, maybe not as big or heavy, but incredibly detailed, and that presents new challenges too.
all the small objects you see clearly under the microscope. The conservator's eyes are the microscope. So it's nice because sometimes you find unexpected things under the microscope. It's I can tell you a story about it. There was this archaeologist who brought a really tiny piece of glass for me to conserve, and I was, you know, I had other things to do and I didn't pay attention. So at the end of the excavation season, I said, okay, let's clean that piece of glass. So I put it under the microscope. I placed it under the microscope, and then I started cleaning, and like it was a really tiny piece of glass, 2 centimeters by 2. And while I was cleaning, I saw a face starting to appear, and it was a painted glass with had a face, and it was amazing. So, you know, it's, you never know what you'll find. Even if you already know what you have, at the end, a lot of surprises.
We have our next question here.
Okay.
How are the artifacts dated? Carbon dating or otherwise?
No, they're dated with their context, basically using the context, and they're dated by and every time is what era are you digging in. So you kind of know that you are in in a stratum of Roman times or Frankish period. So you kind of, in a general, for the beginning, there is a general dating. And then the archaeologists are going to date comparing the pottery together or small objects or whatever else can be useful for the date. As for the specialized dating techniques, these are kind of expensive. So you don't give everything to be dated by using high-tech sampling, or that's why, you know.
Yeah. The next question here is,
Mhm.
are all artifacts that are found during the excavations saved and conserved?
Yes, everything is saved and conserved, but not everything is getting an inventory number. We are giving lot numbers, so they're saved together as part of a how would you say,
Sort of the context group. So some of
yes,
the pieces that are found together will be saved together.
yes, that's how we do. And if there is something that is important or unique, that one gets an inventory number and goes to the study collection that we have here in Corinth.
And what is the time frame from the time you uncover the objects to the time it is photographed, maybe like the final photograph?
Well, what do you mean the time frame? I don't understand. Like
So,
how long it will take?
Yeah, could you finish an object in a day? Or if you find it, might it be years before it is conserved?
Well, it depends on the object, on the material, on what you want to, how you want to investigate, let's say. But because we are a small lab and we are working on the field conservation as field conservators, we try to work as fast as we can because other people depends on us. So even if I don't have time to finish something while it's excavate, while we're in excavation season, I will clean it a little bit for the students to be able to, read about it and write their reports, and then I'll get back to it during the winter time. Because we do have reports constantly. So
I have a question to add in as well. You talked about some pot mending and how it's like putting puzzle pieces together. Can you talk a little bit about why you might put a pot back together, or why you might not put it back together, or why you might not keep it all together?
well, basically space limit, but most of the time we put them together and we glue them and try to keep them glued for the future generation. So we're trying to find storage places every time to, let's say, keep the pots as we find them after the conservation, I mean.
Mhm. And we have a question here. It said, how did sites in Corinth maybe fare or go through the war for independence? But I know Corinth wasn't an active excavation then. Are there artifacts from anything around the time period of the Greek War of Independence? Or things that you've conserved from that time period?
Yes, there are, and we had an exhibition, a periodical exhibition last year, and it ended up in December, and there should be something on the internet about it.
All right, this is a final call for any questions or lingering thoughts that you have that you'd like to ask Nicol, the head conservator for Corinth Excavations. Nicol, one thing I noticed is you work with a lot of materials. So you showed us a whole drawer full of iron keys and iron locks and nails and gold pottery. I mean, Corinth is known for their pottery, so lots of ceramics. You talked about glass. We saw some marble sculptures. Is there a material that you just personally enjoy working with, or that is kind of one of your favorite materials to conserve?
Well, I like metals a lot, and they're challenging. So yeah, metals are my thing, let's say.
And they're some of the smallest sometimes too. Yeah.
Yes, try to conserve a small metal bead that you cannot even hold in your hands.
All right.
That's why I was saying it's a challenge.
Yes, it's a challenge. I'm not seeing any final questions. It looks like we have answered everything we are wondering today. So Nicol, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing all about conservation from the archaeology point of view, from finding it in the field to treating it in a lab or in the field, wherever is needed. We really appreciated hearing from you today and sharing with our audience all about conservation. So to those of you listening, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm going to put in the chat a couple links for our next symposia. We have one with some of the Tennessee Triennial artists on March 2nd at 6 p.m. that will be virtual. We also have one in person on April 6th, sponsored by the Archaeological Institute of America. So thank you very much to Nicol for joining us live from Greece. Good evening, and thank you all for joining us online. Hope you have a wonderful day, and we hope to see you at more symposia soon.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you're the first to know about all the exciting things happening at the Nashville Parthenon.